Alright, hello again. So we continue with the game von Scheve Teichmann, and as you remember, last move by white was a4, and then black decided to make some space for his bishop. Okay, white proceeds with his plan, and black decides not to take it. He could have taken it, but not with the bishop. So taking with the bishop would be a grim mistake. So for example, takes. Now you can see that this rook attacks the bishop while this knight protects it. So all white needs to do is to dislodge this knight. And how can he do that? Well, by playing here. So once the knight moves, then the bishop lacks support. For example, knight e8, rook a5, and white is winning. But while taking with the bishop is not good, taking with the knight is perfectly playable. So the game becomes complex, but in the end, maybe black is slightly better. It's hard to judge. So I think if you turn on the engine, it will tell you that black is slightly better, but white has some compensation. But this is really not important. What is important are the ideas. So the idea here was to mix things up, and actually black believed white, so he retreated his bishop. Okay, next move is pawn to h3. So white was probably afraid, of this move, pinning the knight against the queen, but in doing so he made a concession. Why is this pawn here a concession? Because these three pawns, they are the defenders of this guy, and each time you move any of them, this guy can feel it. So when they are in the starting position, the king is the safest. Once they start moving, gaps start to appear, targets start to appear for the opposing pieces. So h3, not really the best move. All right. It does set a trap. So for example, if black was greedy and naive and decided to capture here and capture here, he would have regretted it. So for example, ed4, cd4, queen e4, and I'm pretty sure that all of you can already see what's happening on this file. So rook e1 wins the game, like in one of the previous variations. So okay, black didn't do that, he just played another developing move. So he is preparing to evacuate his king if needed. Also, he put some pressure here, and also this knight looks in this direction as well. We'll see, maybe it will come into play. Now white doesn't react in the best way, so he decides to capture, but it was definitely better just to hold, just to maintain the balance by protecting this pawn and looking at this queen through these pawns and discouraging black from capturing here. Alright, so white didn't feel the danger, so he just took. He took here, and black now. How should black recapture? What do you think? Of course, you cannot do this because you'll just lose your queen. But you have two options. You can take with this knight or with this pawn. What do you think? How should black recapture? So it is pretty obvious here because of this guy. See, this pawn, as I mentioned before, it limits the scope of this knight. So if you were to recapture like this, you're left with a guy that has no prospects. Here it's blocked by his own pawn, and these two squares are taken by this guy, and this square is controlled by the rook. So all that is left for him are some backward spots. Sorry, like this, or maybe here once the queen uh, evacuates from this spot. So for that reason, you don't want to take with the knight. You want to take with you don't want to take with the pawn. You want to take with the knight, because now black solved the problem of that knight that didn't have any prospects. Why bishop is attacked, knight is attacked, although knight is defended, but still this knight looks very strong, so white decides to exchange it. And again, you don't want to take with a pawn here. It's not bad, but it's not the best either, because you want to activate your pieces. Look, you already have one bishop dreaming of doing something against white king. You have another bishop with similar ambitions, and then you have this knight that is very close to the opposing king. So by capturing with the queen, you bring yet another piece into action, and now some ideas start to appear. Now white, he would like to chase this queen, but he just cannot do it. For example, he cannot push this pawn because of this pin. On top of that, even if there was no pin, pushing the pawn would run into something like this, check and picking up the bishop. So he cannot really dislodge this queen in one move. He can't offer a trade either. All the squares are controlled. But he can maybe dream of doing some maneuver like this and attacking the queen, but it takes time, and on top of taking time, it also blocks his pieces. So that's what he tried. He tried to do that kind of maneuver and eject this queen, but now comes the tactical shot. If you want, you can pause the video and try to find it. It's not easy if you haven't seen similar ideas, but alright, so I'll just show you. So bam, bishop h3. So if you remember, I told you a few minutes ago that moving this pawn was a concession. So now we can see why. This pawn was a target, and black capitalized on that. So of course you have to take. There are no other options except, yeah, so you cannot do this. Now this one is not possible, because black will just take advantage of this pin and place the queen here. You cannot capture because your king is at the end of this diagonal, and on the next move this spot is going to collapse because black attacks it with two pieces. I mean, the only way to protect it is by retreating the knight, but this pin is still on, so black can just pounce. There is nothing white can do. How will you prevent this mate? Now, if you go back to defend that square, then the disaster happens on this square. Alright, so a knight f3 wouldn't help, so white decided to capture the piece. But again this pin helps black continue with his attack. So check, this is not possible because once again the pawn is pinned. So there is only one move. Now the other pawn falls with check. King has only one move. Now we bring another piece into the attack, threatening checkmate here. If the knight wasn't here, then a move like this could defend that square. But knight is unfortunately sitting here, so there is no such defense. So all white can do is to play knight f3 and cover the mentioned square. But now the queen cannot come to defense because the square is occupied, and black takes advantage of it by giving one check. There is only one move, and now bishop finally comes in. So what's the idea of this move? The idea is to control this square. I remember when black was giving checks from left to right, the king was just shuffling. But now, once you give the check here, the king cannot shuffle anymore because this square is taken. So he will have to interpose and then just be checkmated. If he captures the bishop, then this is also a checkmate because all the squares are taken and the king is attacked. All right. So this concludes the whole game. It took 2 videos to cover the game, but I hope it helped you. I hope it helped you and that you learned something from it. Don't forget to comment if you have any observations or would like something to share, and I would appreciate if you could subscribe or like. All right, take care and see you again.